Welcome back. I have a special treat for you tonight, some schnitzel and buttery sage Spaetzle. So we're going to start off by taking 2 pork loins here, or as many as you plan on preparing, and trimming off the excess fat. You don't have to get all of it, just try to get as much as possible. Let's grab some plastic wrap, and we're going to take out a sheet of plastic wrap. All you're going to need is one sheet, just about the length of your cutting board. We're going to use this to flatten out the pork loin, and just taking the pork loin in between the sheet of plastic wrap and pounding it out till it's about a 1/4 inch thick. This will help tenderize the meat, and at the same time, it's the traditional way we serve schnitzel. Not to be confused with Wiener Schnitzel, which is made with veal instead of pork. Repeat the process for each of the pork loins that you plan on cooking. It should only take a couple minutes, and then just set them aside, and we'll move on to the next step. So let's mix 2 eggs. We're going to use this for our binder. Just give them a light scramble, nothing special. Meanwhile, we're going to want to heat up some oil on the stove top. So I'm going to use avocado oil. You can use any other neutral flavor oil that you like. You want to use enough oil to where the pork chop just swims. We're not looking to cover it. Heat it up to 330 degrees Fahrenheit using a thermometer. Okay, so let's get our dredging station ready here. So let's start off by putting a 1/2 cup of flour on one plate. And then on another plate, the last plate, let's use plain breadcrumbs. You don't want nothing flavored, and you don't want panko. Let's add those eggs to the middle plate now. And now we can begin our dredging process. You're going to dredge the loin in the flour first, then the egg, and then the bread. But the key is to not to have too much flour or egg when you put it in the bread. So put it in the flour, make sure it's nice and covered, and then shake off the excess. Same thing with the egg. Make sure it's nice and covered, and then we're going to shake off all the excess egg before putting in the breadcrumbs. Now with the breadcrumbs, you don't want to press it down. You just want to lightly cover it. Once it's lightly covered, you're just going to shake off all the excess, and you're going to repeat the process for each of the loins. Once you're ready, we'll begin to fry. We're only going to fry it for about 2 minutes on each side. It doesn't take very long. Make sure your temperature is right because you don't want to burn it. And you don't want to undercook it, otherwise the bread mixture will get soggy. Drain it on a paper towel. And repeat for all the rest of the loins. While it's still hot on the paper towel, just hit it with a pinch of salt. Okay, the schnitzel is done. Now I'm going to use that brown clarified butter that I made in another video. I like the brown butter because it gives a nice nutty flavor. I'm using 1 tablespoon of clarified butter to make my Spaetzle very buttery. So let's boil some water. In a 2-quart pot, about 3/4 full, bring it up to a boil. Add about a teaspoon of salt to the water. If you don't own a Spaetzle lid, well, don't worry, we can use a metal colander. The metal colander has holes on the bottom, which we're going to use as the top to basically press our dough and create Spaetzle. If you notice that the Spaetzle lid has much bigger holes, but I wanted to show you with the colander just in case you don't own one. Now let's make the dough. In the comments for the recipe, you'll see I put different proportions depending on how much Spaetzle you want to make. I'm using the smallest version of the recipe, so I'm using 1 cup of flour. I'm going to add 3 eggs, This dough is very sticky. So the object is you want to work fast and in small batches. And we're going to use cold water in between batches to rinse off the colander because the dough is very sticky and it helps cool the colander down between the batches. So now we're going to add a 1/4 cup of milk to the dough. So once you got all those ingredients put together, we're just going to whisk it until it's smooth, but we don't want to overbeat it to make it tough. So once it gets to be a smooth, sticky mixture, go ahead and stop and let it rest for about 5 minutes. Reduce the heat on the boiling water to low. And then place your colander on top of the pot, working quickly so we don't cook the dough on top of the colander. Use a spatula and just press the dough through the holes, and it'll drop into the water and start cooking immediately. Once you get this batch done, take your colander over to cold water, give it a rinse and cool it off, and we'll prepare for the next batch. The dough comes off real easy with cold water. So, there you go. The Spaetzle is already cooking in the water. It'll float to the top. Some will stick on the bottom, but just give it a nice stir. And we're just going to let it cook for about a minute or two until it gets all nice and puffy. And once we're ready, we're going to go ahead and drain it and add it to the brown butter that we have waiting in the other pan. So this is only the first batch. I'm going to repeat it for a second batch. Because you can never have enough Spaetzle. Using a Spaetzle lid, it's much faster. But, like I said, I want to show you what it's like with just a colander. Stirring it up. Okay, now that we've transferred it all over to the pan, I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of sage to the Spaetzle and then just toss it up to give it a nice mix. Continue cooking on the heat until it gets done to the crispiness that you're looking for. So let's plate it up. Start off by adding the Schnitzel. Then we're going to add some of that buttery Spaetzle to the side. Doesn't that look good? Traditionally, it's served with a slice of lemon. The Schnitzel tastes really good with a squeeze of lemon on it. Okay, let's add some green. How about some parsley on the side? I also made some hot, chunky applesauce for dipping or maybe dessert. Enjoy! Until the next time, I'll see you in the kitchen.